From creating an entire Yellowstone multiverse set in different times, to not wanting to threaten the authenticity of any of these projects. Here's why a Yellowstone crossover episode will never happen. Yes, even if there are too many stories available, Sheridan simply wouldn't let that happen. The truth is, along with having enough storylines, the Yellowstone universe has different timelines to create crossovers with 2 prequels already here and another one just on its way. Not just that, it's even getting a spin-off soon. So, yes, there's a lot going on there. Apart from the Yellowstone universe, there's a lot more that Sheridan has been working on, including the mayor of Kingstown. Given all that, it's clear why fans have been wondering whether the creator will think out of the box and give fans a crossover. But fans demanding one crossover episode alone wouldn't make it happen. The ball is in Sheridan's court, and he reportedly decided not to harm any of his projects by doing so. Maybe a crossover between different prequels of the show, or one with another one of his shows. Well, for everyone who thought there was any connection between Yellowstone and the mayor of Kingstown, sorry to disappoint you. But Hugh Dillon has rejected all those crossover rumors. Not only did he reject the theories, but he also gave the reason why. The show's co-creator confirmed that the idea was never even on the cards. He said that Yellowstone and the mayor of Kingstown are 2 different shows. They're basically different on every level, say it be the concept or the setting. He then also mentioned that he looks at Sheridan as a musician. He wrote Kingstown first and then went on to work on Sicario and Wind River and Yellowstone. After all that, he returned to work on the show when the production began. Dillon is related to both shows as he appears as Sheriff Donnie on Yellowstone and Anne in Kingstown, and he pitched the idea of Kingstown to Taylor back in 2008. So it's safe to say that he's been with Sheridan for a long time, and they definitely discussed the whole matter. He also stated that when Sheridan sticks with something, it's the specificity that matters the most to him. Apparently, Sheridan simply wants each of his projects to be authentic, and that's what makes his writing so good. So, in order to keep the authenticity intact, there's no way a Yellowstone, Kingstown crossover is happening. But then again, that's not the only show that could have gotten a crossover with Yellowstone, right? I mean, the General could also end up meeting the Duttons. Just like fans have been wanting a crossover between TMOK and Yellowstone, there are people who want to see Sylvester Stallone somewhere in the Yellowstone universe. Like John Dutton, the General is also a badass character, and Tulsa King is also one of Sheridan's projects. When the show was yet to premiere, the questions about a crossover already started flooding, and fans were curious to know whether John Dutton and General would get to meet. Sly also talked about this matter, and he was once asked about the possibility of the meetup, but his answer made it clear that it wasn't happening. Stallone said, "You mean I go over and I killed John Dutton?" The answer was amusing, but that made sense as well. After all, there's no logical reason for the 2 to meet. He continued to say that if that's what fans want, they got it. But believe me when I say that he was totally joking, because he continued by saying that after that, the General would take over the ranch. The actor said that later in the episodes, fans will see him in those cowboy spirits, but obviously his turning into a cowboy doesn't automatically make him related to the Duttons, but he'd be totally in for it if it were to happen. After all, Stallone doesn't get so excited about everything. It seems like Sly loves the idea of being a cowboy, and he sure looks like a Yellowstone fan as well. He acknowledged that the cowboy theme is, in fact, a kind of blending of the 2 shows together, but that doesn't count as a crossover. He also stated that it's not like he'd get to stay at John Dutton's guest house, but most fans still believe that it'd be thrilling to see Stallone pulling up to the Dutton Ranch and then going head-to-head with Costner. Well, one can only imagine because, once again, not happening. But there's a crossover already there, right? I hope you didn't forget about the 6,666 and 1,883 crossover. Sheridan doesn't want to mix up his works by including a crossover episode in Yellowstone, but then how would he justify the 6,666 and 1,883 crossover that fans aren't even liking anymore? Mostly spin-offs mostly don't get overlapped with the original series, since the purpose is to keep the storylines unique. And that's how Sheridan also wants each and every one of his projects. Then how in the world did he let this crossover happen? Turns out for this one, he was hoping to come up with a much clearer image of the Duttons and the lifestyle they've had for generations. But what the fans noted was the fact that this crossover made the creator ignore the original series. And yes, everyone was irritated, because of the way these spin-offs were just simply taking away everything from the original series. Some fans even took out their anger on Twitter as they continued to get tired of the 1,883 prologue and 6,666 scenes. After all of this takes up time, and fans just want to watch their favorite show for a full hour. But these crossovers just leave like a half an hour long show for them to watch. So yeah, that's one reason why Sheridan just keeps everything separate now, especially if the show in question isn't the one from the Yellowstone universe. But fans expected the 1800 AV3 spin-off crossover to be sealed. This spin-off 1883 is more about telling fans more about the early life of the Dutton family, which ultimately made it super easy for a crossover to happen. When the show was yet to be released, a theory took the fandom by storm, as they speculated that characters from the original series might be there in the spin-off as well. The point made was that the spin-off in question is actually set about 104 years before the original series happened. That ultimately made it impossible for the showrunners to include any of the characters from Yellowstone. But what about flashbacks? Fans have been pointing out that just like there were too many flashbacks in the original series, the 1883 spin-off could also see some flashbacks, or would you call it flash forwards? Quite honestly, this one's possible. For the longest time, we've witnessed several different flashbacks happen in Yellowstone, but could they really go as far as 104 years? Also, I wonder if flashbacks even count as a crossover, because fans are actually asking for an entire episode dedicated to a mix-up. And here's the fun part. It's not just Sheridan's other projects that fans have asked for a crossover about. In fact, Longmire is also on this list. Ideas have no fee, so people can think about literally anything, even if the concept they're thinking of is totally impossible. Yellowstone fans have a thing for comparing the show with Longmire, and well, they did that. The idea of a crossover between these two shows isn't bad, but the way most people put it is actually funny. A Reddit user I can see text from here stated that they could simply pick up one Longmire series book and cast the Yellowstone cast for a movie based on this book. Not just that, this user also stated that the direction of this crossover movie should be given to Sheridan. Apparently, this was supposed to turn Longmire into some sort of a Yellowstone episode, but with a different approach. But here's the thing, even if it doesn't make sense as of now, if they end up making a film that way, it'd be an amazing one. And I bet Western fans would love it. That's what they said in reply to this idea, at least. At the end of the day, most fans will want to watch a crossover episode. Sheridan will never do it, that's for sure, unless someone quite literally begs him for it. But it's also true that if someday he decides to create a crossover episode for Yellowstone, it should be with the mayor of Kingstown. Kingstown and Yellowstone have a lot in common, and no one will have to kill anyone and take over the ranch. Instead, a political agenda, fight, or friendship could be what's needed to make an episode like that a banger. But all of that is simply imaginary. If Sheridan mixes these two shows up, the authenticity will eventually fade away, and that's what he probably fears the most. So, from not wanting to threaten the authenticity of any of these projects to creating an entire Yellowstone multiverse set in different times, that was why there will never be a Yellowstone crossover episode.